Chris, I got I'm in a creator group on Signal now of other people who make podcasts.
Sorry to hear that.
Somebody asked me. Yeah, it turns out when Twitter kind of sucks, everybody just moves off of Twitter, but they're moving on to WhatsApp or Signal. So I'm in like 5 or 6 different chats all around a topic. And it's just only, so like I'm one for like tweeters. I guess we need to have one for shit posters, podcasters. And then there's startup studios. I got put in one for venture and startup studios, which is fun to say the least.
Yeah.
It turns out I have some opinions on business. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. But anyway, so in the podcast group, somebody asked me like, who's our target audience for this podcast? And I didn't have a good answer.
I don't know. What should it be?
I thought about it overnight because I've had 24 hours to think about something, which is usually enough time for me to run out of interesting thoughts on it.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know. We're kind of like savvy observers of business and to some extent life. That's what I feel like this is for people who get a joy out of watching the circus, but don't feel really bad when it goes good or bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's how I would describe it.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think we cover a lot of stuff, right? It's not just these like, we cover the small scrappy businesses, we cover some fraud, we cover the $1 billion ideas. Like you never know what you're going to get, right? So that's good.
So I'm building this Girdley distribution and production machine for Girdley content because I've discovered I can create all day long. Like I'm working on a Twitter thread about why you should never bet against America. And my whole hypothesis is geography, by the way. I think it's going to be a banger or nobody will like it.
Okay.
Actually, I don't want to ruin the whole thread, but basically the idea is if you go look at the geography of the United States, if this was like Civ, you remember Civilization, the game?
Sure.
If like we were the civilization that got to start where we get to start, it's like super overpowered, right? Like you have the Mississippi River Basin, which basically makes every interior city in America a ocean facing port.
Right.
And then you connect that to the Great Lakes through Chicago. So that suddenly makes every Midwestern town connected to the to the oceans. And then it gets even more OP because then you have the barrier islands that go all the way from Brownsville, Texas, basically to Providence, Rhode Island, that create a whole nother protected river without a bunch of waves and stuff like that where you can run barges on as well. And the reason it's so OP for America and American goods and food and exports is because transporting stuff by water is 10 to 30 times cheaper than transporting it by land. So like American goods get like this overwhelming like cost advantage and production advantage because of like this geographical nature. And I haven't even gone into the other stuff. There's a bunch of other stuff that's OP about the United States.
I just live tweeted that and I got 4,000 likes as you were talking. I hope your thread does well though. This is amazing.
Who knows? I mean, it's broader than my normal BS about, how to like make more money from business, but I feel good about it.
I'm excited for it.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
We'll see. Or I could get 3 likes, which is like most of my stuff.
That's how Twitter goes. You can never tell exactly. If it's a banger in your head, it's guaranteed to get 3 likes. If it's the dumbest idea you've ever had, you're going to go viral and you'll be in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow. That's just how the world works.
Cool. All right. Did we cover my topic about who our audience is? I guess if any of our listeners can tell us who our audience is, that would be good.
Tell us who you are. We want to get to know you.
Yes, this is about scaling our relationships. Join our community. It's all about communities now. It went NFTs, communities, AI. That's how it works.
Paid community. Somebody's got to cover my salary, Call it $20 a month. Paid community.
You will appreciate New Me, by the way. New Me decided this year that I'm done doing free public speaking engagements. Either your event is so big that it's going to be a platform that's going to further my career, or you're paying me. And it's funny to talk to people now where they're like, but you spoke last year for free. And I'm like, yeah, that was old Girdley. New Girdley, he getting paid. So
New Girdley writes banger Twitter threads and has launched like 10 new businesses in the last year. So, pay up. How do you decide what you get paid? I was actually thinking about this the other day because I just say no to all speaking events because I don't like them. But I was like, how would I decide? Right. And I think that there's certainly who's the audience, and is the audience or is the event so big that it's going to further your career? Like if you get, invited to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, you probably wouldn't go, okay, 50,000 or I'm not showing up. But if you get invited to some random shit conference, like, yeah, I'll do it for 10 grand or 5 grand or 50 grand. But how do you pick the number?
I asked around what other people were charging, and then I picked 2/3 of that. And then when I get paid that, I increase the rate next time.
Nice.
That's my general strategy.
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, for a keynote, I asked for 15,000.
Okay.
Plus expenses.
I'll do it for 14,000.
Yeah.
If you're listening, Chris Bakke, 14,000. If you want the big guns, Girdley, you got to pay 15.
It is part of my strategy of being okay selling my time, because then it gives me an answer for people that ask for me to do stuff for them, but also not selling my time very much, which is I just keep pricing it so high that nobody ever takes it. So if you want an hour of my time, I'm going to charge you a lot.
Totally.
I'm going to deliver for you, and I'm going to care, and I'm going to provide a lot of extra value, but it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
Because I don't really want to sell my time. I want equity. I don't want to sell my time.
I'm with you. Yep.
All right, what topics do you have here? I have 3 more topics. We already covered my first one, plus 3 I hadn't planned because I gave you full currently.
Should we go on a brief little rant? Oh, speaking of equity, let's talk about an awesome private equity story that was in the news that I just wanted to point out, because the actual news story, right? It was that Fox News settled out of court for $788 million or whatever it was. But the underlying story is way funnier, right? I don't know if you've heard this, but have you heard about Dominion and who bought it and, all that good stuff?
Yeah. Go ahead. I don't want to ruin your thunder.
All right. So Dominion, right? This company, Staple Street, buys them, or they buy 76% of the company, I think in 2018 for $38 million. And there's all these risks when they do the deal. And they've actually, the CEO of Staple Street, this private equity company that bought Dominion Voting Systems, which is a ballot counting company, essentially. They talked about all the risks publicly. And then Fox News just settled with them for $788 million, which is roughly the amount of assets under management that the entire private equity company has. So this bet was like a 20-bagger over a 4-year span, because they got involved in this giant lawsuit with Fox News. They settled out of court. They basically got almost $800 million on a $40 million bet. And it's kind of unprecedented. There are definitely these smaller companies that win litigation, and that money comes back to the private equity, company and their investors and their partners. But this is unprecedented, I think, in terms of a 20-bagger on a $40 million investment coming back because of litigation. They didn't necessarily run the company great, but they got involved in litigation that became this massive world spectacle. And their investors are going to make more off of this one little dumb deal than probably anything else they invest in as a firm.
So if they're doing 2 and 20 on that, so 2% management fee, 20% carry, which is standard in the industry, on $40 million, let's say they turned it into $800 million, because they still own the company.
Yeah.
So they turn that in, and then they have another lawsuit. No, it's a different company. But so let's just say $800 million in profit. That's $160 million that goes straight to the partners.
Yep.
So basically you have to ask yourself, would you rather Fox News have $800 million, or would you rather private equity private equity partners make $160 million on one lawsuit? It's pretty close.
Yeah. It's a tough call.
It's like the railroad thing. It's which way do I send the train?
Lever. Yeah, where are we going here? Yeah. No, it's a tough call, but yeah, they're and then also, I mean, if they're, if the partners are, further invested in the fund, I mean, they could be, the partnership of this relatively small unknown private equity company probably made hundreds of millions of dollars just between 3 or 4 partners over this lawsuit. Pretty wild.
Yeah, the math is 160 million. That's 20%.
Yeah.
Of an $800 million gain.
Yeah.
Sick. Good for them. That's why they fly in private jets, and I have a Southwest Airlines companion pass.
You're both getting from point A to point B. I mean, your plane is bigger. Faster. You just have to share it with other people, you know?
And it smells.
Yeah. And it's late a lot.
All right. Oh, and gets canceled. Yeah. All right. Hey, let me give you one. This is, since we're talking about how much money these guys made, I will give you a pitch. This is a pitch. Okay. Somebody could make a $5 million business out of this very quickly. I'll give it to you. All right. So the thinking behind this is universally there are markets that start to die, but a resilient group of people hang on. Like I've talked about, like the floppy disk business, like people in the floppy disk business, and some guy like is the czar of floppy disk, makes $1 million a year dealing in floppy disks and floppy disk drives. Netflix announced this week they are ending their DVD subscription by mail service. And there's at least several million people who are still getting DVDs by mail. They may also be buying hearing aids on the regular and like doing all kinds of stuff. But like they're getting DVDs by mail. Like I think this creates an amazing white space for somebody to start up and do what Netflix did and just be the DVD by mail thing. Because let's do the math. Like even if you have 250,000, you get 250,000 customers in the United States, right? And they pay $15 a month times 250,000. So what is that? 3.75 million in revenue per year or per month just from that. Like it is a tiny, tiny slice of the market. You still need to have a pretty big business there. And even if you only get 50,000 customers, who gives a crap? You're doing 100,000 a month, and all you got to do is photocopy some DVDs. Like, call me crazy. Like this is a perfect time where it's so small that it doesn't matter to Netflix anymore, but there is a core of the market that's going to be watching DVDs in the year 2100. Yeah. It just doesn't matter. So that's my pitch for you.
I love it. I've done the hard work and I've done customer development for this idea because two of my neighbors are old rich guys with movie theaters in their houses. And they're livid that that Netflix is cutting it off. Seriously. Like if you're a rich dude and you have like a nice movie theater in your house, you want to watch your stuff off of Blu-ray because you invested in like an $80,000 like commercial Blu-ray player, and streaming like sucks. Like they can't get the same quality that you can get off of, you know, DVDs and Blu-ray. And so now they're in this bind. Like I mean, obviously they had, you know, millions and millions of revenue coming from this business. And to your point, you know, a certain percentage of those people will just say, okay, the DVDs are dead and they're never coming back. But yeah, people, I don't know what the other segments are, but definitely the wealthy home movie theater crowd is they're up in arms in their gated communities, just, you know, angrily posting on Nextdoor about this. So
they'll pay. You got randos out in Montana in like cabins who have no internet. You have privacy like extremists who don't want anybody to track them. Like you got that crowd. Like there's a segment of zealots that want you to mail them copies of Pretty Woman on DVD, the director's cut. And like, you can do this. Like, I think it's all there. Like, you know, you get some customers going, it's like beautiful SaaS economics. Like you just go. So yeah, that's my pitch for you. You can have that idea because it's,
I love it.
I'm not doing it.
This is like, I just looked up in real time. So this is from 2021. Guess how many people are still paying for AOL's dial-up service?
My mom plus 1.999 million people.
Yeah, you're pretty close. It's shrinking rapidly. So I think in 2015, it was about what you said, 2.3 million dial-up subscribers to AOL. Now it's 1.5 million as of 2021. So they're losing, I guess, what is that? They're losing 150,000 people per year. So it's probably still over like 1.3 million people paying $9 a month for dial-up. Quite a business. All these fringe, like legacy early 90s tech ideas, you know, could be like a Series B funded startup. So
are you calling me old again?
Yeah. You said you didn't have dial-up.
No, I totally did have dial-up. Once when I was 12, I ran up a $500 dial-up bill because I was so addicted to CompuServe back in the day. Yeah. My parents still don't let me live that down.
Yeah, I remember getting on the computer and getting yelled at because, like, you know, you're tapping into the same phone system and then nobody can call the house when you're, like, on the internet chatting with your friends on AIM. Those were the days.
And then you had to turn you had to turn off call waiting because it would knock you off the bulletin boards.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Things our other co-host Alex Cohen would know nothing about, that he's recently 30.
To him, old school is back when the phone used to have a cord to it. Oh, back in the ancient days.
Yeah.
All right, I got a couple more. What else you got?
So I saw this thing about Ernst & Young, EY, and their breakup. And it wasn't really about the breakup. I think the news story was that they basically wasted somewhere between 200 and 600 million, depending on who you believe, trying to divide the company. Ernst & Young, which is 390,000 workers, $45 billion in revenue, and they were going to split it into a consulting business and an audit accounting business. And that didn't happen for a variety of reasons. One interesting tidbit that I found pretty fascinating is that there are 13,000 partners at EY. So what ultimately broke this up is that the 13,000 partners all have like roughly equal voting share, and they just couldn't get aligned, and they didn't get enough votes to actually break up this business. But they didn't know that they didn't have enough alignment until they had already spent somewhere between 200 and 600 million dollars on legal fees to break up the business, which is amazing.
What?
Yeah. So that's one thing. I think the more interesting story here is perhaps consulting companies are screwed, aren't they? Like I was going down, as I was reading this story, I was thinking, wow, EY has 390,000 people. All these companies, grew to be massive, particularly over the last like 10 or 20 years. And so when you go down the numbers, you have EY at 390,000 people, Deloitte has 415,000 people, KPMG 270,000 people, PwC 330,000 people. That's 1.5 million people at these big four accounting firms. And then you have like Accenture with close to 1 million people. When you look at where those people live who work at these big firms, of the 330,000 people at EY, 60,000 of them are in the US. And the US is about half of their revenue. So when you look at the makeup of these consulting firms, they tend to be very like Indian, Philippines, Indonesia heavy in terms of where their talent lives. And these tasks that these people are doing are just, they're not coming back. Like when these companies go through these cuts, I think it will be a very slow, painful process. And obviously, I don't think EY is headed to zero. But I think like there's a real... as I was reading this article, I was like, man, we could just see, I think we will see tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of these very low paid jobs, both just become like redundant because things are kind of slowing globally. But more importantly, like the basic research tasks, the basic like co-location tasks and like mapping tasks that these people are doing for these projects can all be done automatically. So as soon as like these companies realize that, their profits can go up significantly by cutting all of these offshore workers, that's going to happen. And obviously small businesses will probably pick up a lot of those people, but these massive firms are just like, I don't think that there will ever be a time in history when EY has 330,000 people again. Could be wrong, but I think AI is going to totally, and already has changed the entire game for what those people are doing. So what happens to those workers and what happens if they don't find jobs quickly is going to be a pretty wild like ripple effect, I think, through the entire world economy here.
So I think data point for you, one interesting thing, if you look at the Dell layoffs, like I saw this like 6 months ago, and Dell laid off 5% of their staff. And I was like, oh, that's not bad. And then I looked at it. It was 15% of their US workforce and 2% of their overseas workforce. So it's like super interesting. It's like, oh, I see what's happening here. But the reality is like the American workers like getting much less competitive. Like it's a real thing. And I'll take the other side of your argument because I've heard this like technology is going to ruin all these jobs. The work is over. We're all going to be like the people from Wall-E, what I'm talking about, like driving around in little cars and the robot services. Like we are a long way from there. And I'm just saying this as like a nearly 50-year-old guy who for the past 30 years has been hearing about this new technology, whatever, is going to knock out like this whole thing. And literally, I was in one of those group chats I talked about. I was in an argument where the guy today was like, yeah, the software business is done. Yeah, everything is going to get commoditized and software is going to be free because of AI. And I'm like, the guy arguing this is like worth $100 million. Like, who thinks that?
Yeah.
Because every technology advantage for the past 50 years, everybody thinks it's going to like kill the software business. You know what it's done? It's made the software business bigger. Like wireless comes along, bigger. Java comes along, bigger. IDEs, third generation languages, PCs, like, Excel. Like, no, it just makes software bigger. And I think what you're going to see is just like the typewriter made your typical like person more productive, like AI is just going to make your typical individual who knows how to use it more productive. And so I think you're going to see some near-term micro pain in the United States where people have to up their game, but we'll do like we've always done. Like we'll just expect more from our workforce and deliver more. And overall, the tide will rise for everybody. That's my don't be scared.
I definitely agree with that. I think my specific point was more directed at I don't think these consulting companies are ever coming back. Like I think that the things that Fortune 500 companies were hiring these companies to do, whether that was like there was this hilarious I think that the lawsuit was with one of these. I think it might have been with Accenture actually, and Hertz had paid like $60 or $70 million for a new car booking app that took like 6 years to build and then never actually got built. And it was just like whatever it was the most classic tale of like, Fortune 100 company trying to work with like basically like a top 5 consulting firm. And, all of these like offshore developers and project managers and program managers and product managers, like, nobody even knows what those things are outside of, the company because they all mean basically the same thing. Just billing time at like hundreds of dollars per hour from India. And the end product sucks. And so I do think like, those jobs will get moved elsewhere. But I just think the days of like, again, EY will continue to exist, I think largely because of their, audit business, but the consulting side of all of these like powerhouses, you just don't need as many people. And I think companies will start to turn to more like off the shelf things to build applications or just smaller like dev shops to build applications. I just think the heyday that all of these companies have had for like 100+ years in some cases is like effectively dead, but we'll see. It could just be that like things are slowing globally and it feels like they're dying, but they're not actually.
Okay. Let me give you the other side of this. There's the jobs to be done framework. Okay. We've talked about this before, right? Like it's the whole, for those of you listening, the jobs to be done framework is you think about like not what the business it looks like you're in, but the actual thing you're doing for the person. So typical example of this is you drive through Burger King, somebody hands you a milkshake in the morning and they discover like a lot of the milkshakes were being bought in the morning. Turns out they thought they were in the dessert business. They were actually in the allow you to take food quickly out of Burger King when you're late to work business. And like, so they started to make breakfast milkshakes, which anyway, don't even get me started on that, but it's a jobs to be done framework. So here's what I think is the misconception about what these big consulting shops actually deliver, whether you're McKinsey or EY or whatever, right? So McKinsey's pretty obvious, like management consulting, you're actually coming in there in most cases when you're a McKinsey engagement, telling the management, of which 70% agree with what you're going to tell them to do, to be able to overrule the other 30%, or to go to the board and be like, board, look, McKinsey said we should do this. I agree with them. Okay, let's go. And if it doesn't work, you get to blame McKinsey. Like that's the job to be done by McKinsey, right? But the same thing happens in EY, right? Like say you hire EY to do your like tax strategy for your corporation. And then what happens is the government comes along 3 years later and says, hey, just kidding. The Irish sandwich that you were using to hide your taxes doesn't work anymore. And they say, you're going to be going to the jail and paying a fine. And we'd be like, well, EY said it was okay, right? That's the actual job to be done with all this stuff. So that is human nature. And it's this principal agent problem that AI is not putting away. Like typewriters didn't get rid of it. Telephones didn't get rid of it. Like humans at the core of this are all still really flawed, and humans are what makes up corporations. And therefore, until you replace the humans with AI and robots, like we're totally screwed. And I will be long Ernst & Young. That's what I'm telling you. Just stay long Ernst & Young.
Well, the first person who told me that he's going to replace human jobs explicitly is Martin Shkreli, who is on another popular podcast promoting drgupta.ai, where he is going to eliminate doctors. And so, if that's sort of like the leader of the pack who says he's going to replace jobs, and I do agree that we probably have a long way to go.
Dude, it's crazy. Like, I still think a banger podcast would be Skrelly, the guy from Fire Festival, Elizabeth Holmes from Prison.
Yep.
And Ty Lopez.
Ty
that would be like
Lopez.
a quad. That's who they need. Like, could you imagine the ad sales on that podcast?
It'd be amazing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Elizabeth Holmes is like
recruit special
on
guests.
a burner phone from her prison cell.
Maybe recruit some special guests from Twitter who lie and just make up stories to help their tweets. That happened yesterday. I was like, oh my God.
I mean,
it's not even believable.
That's 80% of what happens.
Believable.
Yeah. It's 80% of what happens in business Twitter. So, yeah.
It's not even like, at least if I make up a story, Chris, you can at least squint and be like, yeah, I can believe that. But like some of these stories people make up are like, it's not even close.
Maybe once every 6 months, the person who writes the lie gets called out publicly. And that's always the best day on Twitter, right? When it's like, oh, I did this thing and like I was in charge of this big initiative or I invented this thing. And then like the actual inventor or the actual person who had the idea. And then they always have a receipt. They always have a paper trail. And that person's credibility gets ruined for like 48 hours. And then they post some other lie. And then it's like, oh, this person's a genius again. And that's just how things work.
There was a certain individual who I've known. He's been nice to me. He's very friendly, but he would like take credit for projects. Mm-hmm. And then the actual customer comes on and is like, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
You're a liar.
There's like, you could tell that exact story. And there are 4 accounts who all have like massive followings that could be about. So yeah,
there's
maybe 40.
I mean, is this what's holding me back on social media, that I can't lie?
Yeah, grifting.
Like I'm
just blatant lying, blatant grifting. That's what's holding you back from, I think, billionaire status. That's it.
Okay. All right. I have one more, but what else you got?
That was it for me.
Because otherwise Alex yells at us when we go over.
Yeah, Alex is going to like manually cut this podcast off at 30 minutes. So let's get through your last thing and then we'll be good.
Okay. And maybe this is, everybody can quit at this point if they're not interested in this, but I just am so excited by all of the legacy Twitter blue check marks just freaking losing their mind this week.
Yeah.
And then Elon he literally called the system of check marks corrupt, mm-hmm. which, by the way, I agree. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm happy to see it gone. Those people are elitist scumbags as far as I'm concerned. If you think you deserve it because you are junior beat reporter at the Cleveland plain dealer, like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just like, come on.
There's actually a VC whose name is kind of famous, but he's never in the Midas list. Like, it's a VC that you've probably heard of, but he has like 1 million followers on Twitter. And I met him once years ago, and I was like, and he writes, his tweets aren't particularly good. Like, there's nothing that would lead me to believe that he would be like the Twitter guy that everybody would flock to around venture capital. And he was telling me, he's like, oh yeah, like one of my college roommates or one of my best friends in San Francisco was like the product manager who, when new people join Twitter, it recommends like 5 accounts. And so that product manager back in like 2011 just put me as one of those 5 accounts. And they just never changed it for like 6 years. And so anyone, whether you're coming to Twitter for sports or for political news or whatever, was following this one VC because his buddy worked at Twitter 10 years ago and put him in like the auto follow category when you join. And that's basically what was happening with a lot of that like blue check bullshit. But it's great watching all those people lose it over $8 a month. Pay the $8 or don't.
Yeah. Pay up, suckers. You're like the rest of us. I hate most of what Elon has done to Twitter, but I got to give it, like, that's great. I'm super excited about it. And I mean, I am thankful that Elon has totally, like, how quickly the algorithm is changing has made me become a better human, because I just have to try much harder to know what's going to work or what people want to read. And like, it's totally engaging. I feel like my brain is full firing.
I had a moment of despair that all content creators have on Twitter, where I was thinking, I was like, man, I've had a couple tweets recently and they just, they haven't gone very far. They must be suppressing me because I have a blue check now. Like the algorithm's changed. Maybe I need to stop paying for a blue check. Maybe I need to like go to Elon and pay more for my blue check, right? Like just donate more money. And then I looked back at the tweets and I decided, nope, those tweets just suck and nobody likes them. So this is like the constant thing with the algorithm. It's back to what you said. If your tweets aren't taking off, it's because they suck. And that has always been the case. I think that there's like minor days of like suppressing tweets and like weird algorithmic changes. But I think that a lot has changed in the last year. A lot of the changes have been, hard for people who got used to the legacy system, and everything's getting, shaken up right now, which is probably good.
Yeah, I think I published the meme. It was like, your tweets are, the algorithm is broken. It's not that your tweets are bad.
Yeah.
Like, well, I thought I was shadow banned for a while. By the way, somebody I follow was like, I think I'm shadow banned. And I was like, I replied to him, which by the way, he said he was shadow banned. No likes. Like, guy's got like 35,000 followers. And like an hour later, I was like, oh yeah, I thought I was shadow banned for a while too. Turned out my tweets just sucked. So I told him in the reply.
You probably didn't like that.
Oh, man. All right. Well, cool. Should we wrap it up here?
Yeah.
It's good to chat with you.
Yep, likewise.
Maybe next time we could do some business advice for me. So I'm still trying to figure out this newsletter thing, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, I don't know, what to tweet about.
We'll workshop it live next time. That'll be fun.
Maybe I should do Ryan Reynolds style video advertisements for my new business.
I think you should.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah. Maybe you should use some business proceeds and buy like a third-rate soccer team over in Europe, and then we can do like a whole documentary about that. That'll be fun too.
I would totally do that. Could I buy like a first-rate NBA team in San Antonio? We would have some fun.
Yeah.
I would. That's my dream. Like, I would like to own an NBA team, but do it in a DGAF like manner. Just like, have you ever looked back on like the 70s era of Major League Baseball, like Bill Veeck and those guys?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, when you could buy like an MLB team for $2.5 million, and you had like a physician could just like buy an MLB team, and just like, it's like, I'm just like a rich doctor or a rich lawyer, or I like have 2 apartment buildings, and I just use that to like buy an NBA team or an MLB team. That was an amazing era. Yeah.
It's unbelievable what cable did to professional sports. I mean, if you tie it all back, the advent of cable was when professional sports really became a thing, because it did 2 things. One is, before that, you had 3 networks, and the 3 networks decided what to pay you. The TVs were like little tiny squares in black and white, and then cable comes along, and suddenly like these are just games played in order to be shown on television. And then the money just kept flowing and flowing and flowing, and it's pretty amazing. So kudos to those guys.
Yeah.
My ancestors decided to sell fireworks. They could have bought these. They could have bought the Dallas Chaparrals and moved to San Antonio. And nope, we sold explosives out of shacks on the side of the road.
Two different paths to success. So,
actually, my great grandfather, he was one of the leading bankers in San Antonio, and he died of a heart attack in his early 40s. And they had a bunch of shares of banks that are now big time banks in San Antonio, and would be worth dozens, hundreds of millions of dollars for the family. And they sold them all.
He could have easily bought a team back in the 70s or 80s, back when they were $3 million.
Anything. Yeah. Major League Lacrosse, anything you want.
Yeah. Caught pickleball early and just dominated.
Pickleball. Cool.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, hey, good catching up with you. Let's have something special today. I propose something special.
Okay.
No call to action whatsoever.
Okay.
We just ask all the listeners to have a moment of Zen.
Yeah.
Enjoy this.
Enjoy your afternoon or your morning or whatever it is when you're listening.
Or go to Alex's house and just like sit outside and watch it.
Yep.
Don't do that. Actually, please don't. You'll kill me.
Stay away.
All right, man. We'll catch you later.
Alrighty.